Okay, everyone, so welcome to our third lecture. In today's lecture, we're going to go through two primary topics of discussion. The first is we're going to give a brief overview of the Python programming language. And in the second part of today's lecture, we will be going through an introduction to mathematical limits, which is pretty much the starting point of any calculus course. Although, as I have mentioned, we pretty much are going to be taking a very applied viewpoint towards our lecture here. However, I want to get right into today's lecture materials. So with this stated, first thing we're going to do, I want to mention that for the notes in this lecture, I only have information on the limits. I don't have information on the Python because frankly, I just felt that the free ebook here, which I have linked up to in the syllabus, provides a very good, thorough overview of Python. And I really personally could not have added anything of value, in my opinion, to what this author has already done. I think that he's done a fantastic job here breaking Python down, and I would highly recommend that you read through at least the first 4, maybe 5 chapters here, maybe 6, 7. And when I say read, I mean you don't need to go into it deep. You just need enough to get a taste of exactly what it is you're doing. So today we're going to go break down point by point. And what we're going to do is just go through the basics. So the first thing you want to do is open up PyCharm or PyCharm. We discussed that this was a software we'll be using throughout the semester. Hopefully you watched how to install PyCharm video. This was like our second video that is up on the playlist there. And when hopefully you've created a new project, just as I had showed you how to do in that first video. When you do all of that, what I'm going to ask you to do is just create a new Python file. You can do that very easily by just going to File, New, and then Python file. You click on that, you give it a name. I call mine Introduction to Python. Now, here's the way that it basically is going to work. You're going to type, you could type live commands in here, and I do like that for experimenting around with commands just to see what they do. One of the biggest parts of learning a programming language is understanding not only the syntax, but also the different functions that that language has made available for you to use. And the best way to learn how to do that is simply just by trial and error, throwing things as input, seeing what the outputs are, and trying to understand what those functions are really doing. There are help files to help guide you along. Python is a very well documented language, but for now, I would say the best way to go about learning a lot of this stuff is by trial and error. With all of this said, let's get right into it. So as I mentioned, we have the console, but what I'm going to do is actually write the commands up here in the what we call the editor. And the editor is where we can put all of our commands ahead of time. Instead of just putting them one at a time in the console, putting input, getting output, putting input, getting output. That's one way to do it. But the best way, in my opinion, to do it is to do it all in the editor. This is what we call or refer to as coding. Coding is the process of figuring out how to solve a problem by writing a series or sequence of commands that our programming language will eventually execute. So let's get right into it. So the first command that you should learn. So again, what we're doing here is just writing our commands in this text file, and I'm going to show you how to run those commands. The most important command, in my opinion, that one should learn is a comment, which in Python is indicated by a hashtag. A comment is basically just an area in your text document that the Python interpreter is not going to run. But as the name suggests, The comment is there to help guide whoever did not write this code to indicate what exactly the code is doing. It's also a nice way to keep track of your own commands, as well as to outline what it exactly is you're trying to accomplish with your code. So what I like to do when I write code is I like to kind of sketch it out all in comments first, and then I like to go area by area, just writing my actual code under each comment. In my opinion, this methodology keeps everything organized. It allows for a nice, easy flow of the coding process, and it prevents me from getting lost very easily if I just start to go on thinking about different commands that I'm looking to use and whatnot. So with this stated, comments are, comments are the most fundamental type of command that you can learn. And with comments, you start them with a hashtag, and you can write anything. It doesn't matter because the Python interpreter is not going to interpret or use that line of code. So the first thing we're going to do is say, well, let's learn some basic commands. And the very first thing that we usually learn in Python is the idea of values. So we have really in Python two types of values. We have numerical, and then we have literal strings. There's many other types that are out there. Python is what is called an object-oriented programming language, which means that you can have a lot of different types of data. The two fundamental types that we tend to look at in Python, at least, is the idea of numbers and the idea of strings. So when it comes to numbers, you can just type the numbers in directly, and Python's not going to really do anything with those. So for example, what we can do is highlight the number 3, right click, and then we could do execute selection in Python. Now I'm going to use this shortcut here for me because it's faster. So the keyboard combination Alt-Shift-E. So if you see me running things, that's because I'm just pressing that combination. The first time I'm going to click it here, and you can continue to choose to right click each one. I think it's just faster if you use the keyword combination. And you'll notice that when you run it, okay, it's the same effect as just typing in the number 3 here in the console. The difference, of course, is that I have it recorded here ahead of time, and all I'm doing is just sending this command down to Python. Now, obviously, if you highlight it and you do your Alt-Shift-E, it will send that command to the Python terminal as though you had typed it in line by line. As we can see, typing in numbers is not that interesting, and Python is interpreting them, but it's not really doing anything with them. We will be doing some more stuff in a moment. Now we can see that the second type is what we refer to as literal strings. And with literal strings, there's two ways to accomplish a string. So what is a string? A string is a piece of text information, and usually we indicate this by putting the text information in between quotations. So this is some text, more text, and I don't know, just text. And if you run those, again with the Alt-Shift-E, you'll see that Python interprets this with a single quotation. You can go back and forth, it doesn't matter. It interprets this as text information. Quick question, what type of data do you think this is? And let me just comment that. Is it a string or number? Well, interestingly enough, if you guessed string, you were actually correct. It is not a number. So the one way that you can try that is to pass that to see what type it is to use the type function. And we'll be getting more into functions in just a few moments. But basically the way that the type function works is similar to like how Excel functions work. You type in the word type, open the parentheses, and then your inputs go between the parentheses. In this case, I want to put the parentheses of type quotation 4. And when we do this, if you run that whole command, Alt-Shift-E again, you'll see that it comes back as type str. In other words, it is a string. It's not a number. On the other hand, if you were to do just 4, okay, now do Alt-Shift-E, you'll see it comes back as int, which stands for integer. What this simply means is that the actual literal values you're going to be using in Python matter. It matters whether or not it's a string or a number. So you have to be very careful about how you're writing your commands, in other words. The minute you put things between quotations, it becomes a string. The minute you just, if it's a number at least, leave it alone, it's just interpreted as an integer. What about just regular names without quotes? That is, what if we put the word text here before, for example, right? And we ran Alt-Shift-E and we get just text, right? But what if I were to just type in the following, just text without the quotations, and I run that? We get an error, and it says that text is not defined. What does this mean? Well, everything in Python is an object, and so you need to define objects by their names. If you don't define an object by its name, it's not going to know what to do when you type in that name. In other words, each name is associated with some type of piece of data. So you need to make sure that this connection holds. With all of this stated, these are the very basics of numbers and string literals, what we call literals. In the next video, we're going to go a little bit more and see a little bit more into it and see just how these two pieces of information can be used to solve problems in Python.